My name is Eva Martin, and I was born into a family that needed someone to blame. I don't think anyone wakes up one day and says, "Let's make our oldest daughter the emotional punching bag." It's more subtle than that. It's a slow drip. One excuse, one eye roll, one sigh at a time. Before you know it, your name becomes shorthand for something went wrong. When my little sister bombed her math test in 5th grade, my mom sat me down at the kitchen table like I was the one who'd flunked. "You're supposed to be the example," she said, eyes tired and tone flat. I was 12. I still braided my Barbie's hair. If the dishwasher broke, my dad wouldn't ask what happened. He'd just grunt, "Did you touch it?" And that wasn't a question. That was a verdict. I started flinching at noises. My stomach tightened when I heard footsteps in the hall. I could tell from the weight of the silence whether it was going to be a blame Eva kind of day. Spoiler, it usually was. Sometimes I wondered if I really was the common denominator. Maybe there was something wrong with me. Some curse I didn't know I carried. Other families had Sunday dinners and inside jokes. Ours had short fuses and whispered tension. I kept trying to shrink myself, to smile more, be more helpful, stay out of the way. But no matter what I did, I was always too much of something and not enough of everything else. They never actually called me the scapegoat, but I saw the pattern long before I understood the word. You can only hear, "What did you do now, Eva?" so many times before you start to answer with your silence. And I had gotten very, very good at staying quiet. When you hear the same story enough times, you start to memorize it, especially when it's about you. I internalized it all like gospel. If someone was upset, it was probably my fault. If the air felt thick and cold, I must have made it that way. If Dad didn't speak during dinner, Mom would look at me like I should have done something, anything, to keep the peace. Peacekeeping became my role. Not happiness, not connection. Just quiet damage control. I convinced myself I was hard to love. Not on purpose, just by design. Like I was made wrong. My voice was too soft, my laugh too loud, my presence too heavy. So I tried to adjust, cutting off pieces of myself just to take up less space. I apologized for things I didn't do. Smiled when I wanted to cry. Nodded when I wanted to scream. It's strange how a person can be so loud inside and still go unnoticed. My little sister Lauren had it easier. She was vibrant, reckless, sometimes cruel, but she was golden in their eyes. And if she messed up, well, that's what I was. Therefore, her mistakes slid off her shoulders and landed squarely on mine. "You're older," they'd say. Like that meant I was supposed to be perfect. And I tried. God, I tried. Straight A's, clean room, polite company smile. None of it earned me love. It only made them expect more, or maybe resent me more. I could never tell the difference. But what hurt the most wasn't the yelling or the blame. It was the way they never even asked how I felt. Like I was a character in their drama, not a person with a heart of my own. Started to believe their version of me. Not because it felt true, but because it was the only truth I ever got. And for a long time, that lie became my whole identity. It was late. The kind of quiet where even the refrigerator hum feels loud. I had gone downstairs for water, barefoot, careful not to make noise. Being invisible was second nature by then. That's when I heard them. Mom and Dad in the kitchen. The lights were off, but their voices drifted out, soft and conspiratorial. "She's so easy to blame," Mom said, with a lightness in her tone I'd never heard when she spoke to me. "She never talks back." Dad chuckled, not just a small laugh. One of those amused, belly-deep ones. "Yeah, makes things simpler." I stood there, frozen in the hallway, the glass slipping a little in my hand. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. It wasn't shock. Not exactly. Somewhere deep down, I'd always known they found it convenient to pin everything on me. But hearing it spoken out loud, casual, almost gleeful, was like someone peeled my skin back and poked the nerve underneath. I wasn't their daughter in that moment. I was a solution, a scapegoat, a silence they could control. I didn't cry. I didn't storm in. I didn't even flinch. I just turned and walked back up the stairs, every step lighter than the one before. Something inside me shifted, cracked open with a strange kind of calm. I wasn't sad anymore. I was done. By the time I reached my room, I had already made the decision. No yelling, no confrontation. I didn't need their validation, their confusion, or even their apologies. I packed one small suitcase, took only what I needed. Left the rest, the pain, the confusion, the worn-down version of me they'd built. I wrote a single sentence on a torn notebook page and left it on the kitchen table. I'm not your punching bag anymore. I didn't wait for morning. I walked into the night alone, and I didn't look back. There was no grand plan, no secret bank account, no dramatic goodbye. Just me, a cheap suitcase with a sticky zipper, and the kind of silence that felt more like relief than fear. The air outside was cool still. It wrapped around me like something sacred. I remember the way the streetlights hummed, how the pavement felt solid beneath my shoes. I wasn't running. I was releasing. And every step away from that house was a step back toward myself. I walked to the bus stop 3 blocks down. No one followed. No one noticed. It was 2:17 a.m. when I boarded the night route. The driver didn't ask questions. I appreciated that more than I could explain. I sat by the window, staring out at the sleeping world, letting the quiet wrap around my thoughts like a blanket. My friend Kara had always said I could stay with her if I ever needed to. I used to laugh it off, pretend I'd never need an escape route, pretend I was fine, but she meant it. And when I showed up on her doorstep, suitcase in hand, eyes dry but hollow, she just opened the door and said, "Come in." No judgment, no interrogation, just safety. Her couch became my sanctuary. Her tiny apartment, cluttered and warm, felt more like home in 1 hour than my parents' house had in 18 years. That first night, I lay there staring at the ceiling, unsure whether I should cry or scream or finally sleep. I did none of it, just breathed, the absence of blame, of tension, of walking on eggshells. It was a kind of peace I didn't know my body had been starving for. I wasn't sure what came next. I didn't have a 5-year plan, or even a 5-day one. But for the first time in my life, I had made a decision that was entirely mine, and that was enough. The first morning in Kara's apartment felt strange in the softest way. No one barked my name from downstairs. No tension vibrating through the walls. No blaming eyes waiting at the breakfast table. Just the smell of coffee, the gentle buzz of the city outside, and the unfamiliar sensation of safety. I sat on her couch, wrapped in a worn blanket, watching steam curl from the chipped mug in my hands. My body was still braced for impact, like it hadn't gotten the memo. I was free now. Freedom didn't come all at once. It came in pieces, in the quiet hum of the radiator, in the way Kara said good morning without expecting anything in return, in the way the silence didn't feel like punishment anymore. I got a job at a diner a few blocks away. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. I wiped down tables, refilled coffee, smiled at strangers. There was something healing in the routine, doing something simple and being thanked for it, instead of being accused. Each shift, I stood a little taller. Each paycheck, I felt a little stronger. There was dignity in earning something that didn't come with strings or shame. I'd walk home after my shifts with the kind of tired that felt earned, not emotional. I'd pass windows glowing with families, and instead of feeling envy, I felt distance, like I had stepped outside the glass and finally understood what was missing all those years. Kara never pried. She didn't ask why I left, just offered warmth. That was the gift, being seen without being picked apart. Sometimes I'd still hear my mother's voice in my head, still jump at sudden sounds, still wonder if I'd made it all up. That's the thing about emotional wounds. They don't bleed, but they don't heal easily either. But I was learning to breathe again, not just in and out, but deep. The kind of breath that fills your lungs and tells your heart, you're safe. Now. And that alone felt revolutionary. 1 week passed, then 2, then 3. No calls, no texts, no knock on the door, just silence. And at first that silence cut like a blade. Some small, bruised part of me thought they'd come running. That maybe, just maybe, they'd realize I was gone and feel the hole I left behind. That they'd show up with tears in their eyes, asking if I was okay, telling me I mattered. But they didn't. The phone stayed quiet. The mailbox held only bills and coupons. My name didn't echo from any doorways. And that hurt in a way I didn't know how to explain. Because as broken as it all was, as suffocating and sharp and cruel, I had still wanted to be missed. I had still wanted someone to say, she mattered, even if it was too late. But instead, the silence just stretched. At work, I kept my head down, took double shifts when I could, smiled at customers and learned the names of the regulars. Every now and then, someone would ask, "You okay, kid?" And I'd nod, because what else was there to say? I was okay. Mostly, sort of. Not really. Yes, Kara was gentle with me. She didn't treat me like I was broken, just like I was in the middle of something. Like healing wasn't about being fixed. It was about being allowed. The more days passed, the clearer it became they hadn't reached out, because they didn't know how. Or worse, they didn't feel the need. Maybe my silence made things easier. Maybe they replaced me with their old habits and filled the space with blame aimed elsewhere. But I didn't regret leaving, because with each unanswered day, I realized something important. The silence they gave me was the same one I'd been living, in all along. The difference was, now I had chosen it, and in choosing it, I'd finally taken back my voice. It was a Tuesday. Early. The kind of slow morning where the coffee brews louder than the customers speak. I was wiping down the counter at the diner, half awake, mind drifting. Kara had left a sticky note in my lunch. "You're stronger than you think." I'd folded it into my pocket without reading it twice. That's when my manager, Lisa, tapped my shoulder. Her voice was low, hesitant. "Your parents are here," she said. "They're at the counter." It turned, heart lodged somewhere in my throat. And there they were. My mother, her makeup smudged like she hadn't slept. My father, shirt wrinkled, fingers twitching against his coffee cup. They looked smaller somehow. Not older, just hollowed out. Like they'd been living in a quiet house and finally realized what they were missing. Their eyes met mine. Regret poured from them like spilled ink, but I didn't move. I didn't run. I didn't smile. I didn't break down. I just stood still. And for once, the stillness didn't belong to them. It belonged to me. They waited. 10 minutes, maybe more, watching me from across the counter like strangers unsure how to ask directions. My mother's. Lips parted once, then closed. My father kept glancing toward the exit. I didn't walk over. I let them wait. Eventually, they stood. Left a folded envelope next to the half-full mug. Walked out the same way they'd come. Slow, heavy, defeated. Didn't open the envelope right away. I finished my shift. I served eggs and toast. I smiled at old Mr. Jensen when he told me his joke of the day. It wasn't anger that kept me still. It was clarity. They hadn't come because they suddenly saw me. They came because they missed the version of me who never talked back, who swallowed pain like it was breakfast, who made their guilt easier to ignore. But that version of me didn't live here anymore. She'd been replaced by someone who understood the power of choosing not to go back. I sat on the back steps of the diner during my break, the morning sun creeping over the brick wall, warm on my skin. The envelope they'd left rested in my hands like a stone, plain, white, too light to carry anything worth the weight I'd given it. Still, I opened it. The handwriting was familiar, my mother's. Slanted and sharp, like every word was in a rush to outrun accountability. Eva. We didn't realize what we were doing until the house got too quiet. We thought we were doing our best. Maybe we were just trying to survive in our own ways. It's strange not having you there. Strange and wrong. We miss you. Please come home. We're sorry. No, I'm sorry. Just we're sorry. No real ownership. Just a fog of guilt that didn't quite know where to land. Like they were grieving the absence of me, but not the pain they'd caused. I read it twice, 3 times. Folded it back slowly. What struck me wasn't what they said. It was what they didn't. Not once did they name the blame, the gaslighting, the casual cruelty. They missed me like someone misses a habit, like their silence only mattered once it turned into loneliness. I sat there for a long time, and then I did the simplest, hardest thing I've ever done. I let it go. I didn't cry. Didn't tear it up. I just placed the letter in the trash can behind the diner, alongside yesterday's receipts and half-eaten toast. Some stories don't need a dramatic ending. Some just need a door that stays closed. I wasn't angry anymore. Not the burning kind, anyway. What I felt was stronger, steadier, clarity. Their regret didn't earn them access. Their silence didn't buy them forgiveness. I had already found my voice in the spaces where no one was listening, and I had no intention of silencing it for anyone ever again. After the letter, something shifted. Not dramatically, not like a thunderclap. More like the quiet click of a lock turning, subtle, but irreversible. For the first time in my life, I stopped waiting for someone else to define me. I started writing again. Nothing fancy. Just a notebook from the dollar store and a pen that worked half the time. But it felt sacred, like carving space for a voice that had always been told to hush. Some nights, I wrote everything I never got to say out loud. Other nights, I just described the smell of the diner's coffee or the way Kara hummed when she cooked. It didn't have to be profound. It just had to be mine. At work, I began to speak up. Not loudly, but with more certainty. Actually, that was my table, I'd say when someone tried to take my section. No, I'm not okay with that. When customers cross the line. Small sentences, huge victories. The first time I said no without explaining why, I nearly cried in the break room afterward. Not because I was scared, but because it felt like freedom. Kara noticed. One night over takeout, she looked at me and said, "You seem lighter." I smiled. Maybe I'm just more me. There were still bad days. I won't lie. Sometimes I'd flinch at a sharp tone. Sometimes I'd wake from dreams where I was back in that house, trying to defend myself while no one listened. But I no longer believed the worst things about myself. I wasn't broken. I wasn't unlovable. I wasn't the problem. I was a girl who had been fed a lie and finally learned how to spit it out. And in the quiet, I used to fear, I found something better than approval. Peace. I didn't need their letter to heal me. I had written my own. Months passed. Seasons changed. I moved out of Kara's tiny apartment and into a small place of my own. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls that belonged to me. I painted them pale blue, the color of quiet mornings and fresh starts. Signed up for night classes at the community college, something I'd never dared to dream before. Something that wasn't about proving my worth to anyone else, but about becoming who I wanted to be. Sometimes, on my way home from class, I'd pass by my old neighborhood. The houses looked smaller. Somehow, the streets quieter, like a memory losing its grip. And I felt no pull to go back. My phone dinged one evening. A message from Lauren, my little sister. "Hey, Eva. I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. My heart thumped. Part hope, part fear, part stubborn pride. I didn't respond right away, because this time, the choice was mine. I wasn't the scared girl who ran away. I was the woman who stood her ground. I had found my voice in the silence. And whatever happened next, I knew I would never be the quiet one again. Not because I needed their approval, because I finally understood I was born to be heard.